Hello everyone. This is week 3 of painting with various techniques and using some mixed media hopefully. And as mentioned last week, I would like to demonstrate the plastic film technique. So after wandering around the garden a little bit and looking for inspiration, I hit on the idea of painting wild roses. One of my favourite flowers, I have to add, but at the same time using the cling film technique to create some of the leaf, because in fact it can get very tedious painting all of these little leaves and look a little bit overworked and contrived. So I'm going to experiment using the technique that I just mentioned. So anyway, let's have a go. I'll just turn this music down a bit. It always starts going loudly when I turn it on. Right, okay. These are the colours that I'm using. And I've made a start because I want to show you one or two other things as well. I'm going to use a smaller round brush. This is a size 8 Sable Blend. I'm going to use for the leaves the 3/8 size dagger brush, and very possibly some leaf or twigs and things with the sword brush. For the pink of the flower, I've mixed together permanent rose with a little touch of cobalt to just soften it a little bit and make it slightly less pink. And I'm going to use lovely clean water and use the wet on wet technique. It's a very delicate flower, so I've got a little smaller brush out so that I can be slightly more delicate with it. And they do have, in the centre here, just behind the stamens, a little bit of yellow, very pale yellow. So I've got Cadbury yellow out for that. This one is going to be the main flower, I think, I've only done 3 in the little composition, so maybe I can give that a little bit more colour, but it gets very pale just before it meets that yellow area there, so I don't want that to turn the wrong colour, so I'm being careful about the way I meet up with that with the pink. Dropped a little bit more in while it's still damp and lifting a little bit of light back out. Not completely smooth, it's got some markings. And when you draw your dog rose, if you manage to get hold of one of these, or any other flower that has stamens and a centre, put the centre in first and then give yourself a little mark where, don't know if you can see it, where the stamens are going to sit more or less, without drawing each individual stamen, before you then draw the petals, because otherwise we tend to foreshorten those petals. That's something we need to try and remember every time, because you'll end up with very squat, not quite the right shape flower. So that's a little tip that you need to try and hang on to. So popping a little bit of water down first, but not flooding it, just damp really. And if you want to keep even better control, just let it stop puddling first and shining before you add your paint. So that way you've got lovely control. I don't have the luxury of the time to do that, and I can kind of manage anyway. So a little bit more depth up here, just touching it in, letting it float down in the water and the paint without brushing, because I don't want to move the underneath layer away too much. There's a little bit of light there. And if you feel you want to put some shadow into your little petals at any time, then I would use the cobalt over these colours. But I think I'm getting enough dark and light without having to put too many shadow colours over the top, which actually I'm not that keen on doing on this delicate flower. So I may just leave it like this. I'm trying to get some dark and light markings as I go and hoping that that will be enough. That way we don't have to touch it too much and we're getting that sort of variation all the time anyway. Trying to get variation. So at the same time as painting that top petal, I've just put a little bit more colour into the petal underneath, which is again going to help with some shadow because it's sitting one on top of the other. It'll bring this top one forward a little bit, as there. Right, last petal. If you can't get hold of any wild roses, you haven't any growing near you or in the garden, then maybe go for an ordinary rose, garden rose, because I think this technique that I'm going to use with the leaves will work well indeed for any flower, I guess, any flowers that have a lot of smaller leaves to deal with. But I think it would work with any nice rose if you've got roses in your garden. Or if somebody buys you a lovely bouquet of roses. There, so now I've got to think about the centre, which is okay, I think I can go with it. I would normally allow it to dry a little bit more, but I haven't the time, so I'll do it anyway. But, you know, take your time. So I've got some green gold here for that little central area, which is really a good colour for that. I expect you can see it there. And then I need to put in, I've moved my palette round and I don't really like doing that because I forget where the colours are, but got some raw sienna here. So I'm actually just going to, with the very point of my brush, with my brush upright, just drop in. That's still wet there, so they're going to blend a bit, but that might be nice. Just drop in a few little light colours for the stamens. Don't think about painting every single one. And then some burnt sienna on the top of that, because some of them are looking quite sort of shadowy and dark. But maybe don't go all the way around. Keep some interest by leaving that bit lighter perhaps. And then one or two really darker ones by using some ultramarine blue on the top. And it has blended around here, which is actually looking really pretty. I like it. And if you really want to be precise and particular, flatten your brush and just pull a few of these little colours down to create the stalks of the stamens. Can't see much there really, but that's something that you can just do. Right, so now I need to show you my idea of using the cling film. So you need to have your greens ready, and you need to have lots of little bits of cling film ready as well. I've got it hanging around on my palette and on my chair, little tiny bits like that, all ready. It won't stick very well to my table, unfortunately. Right, so using my dagger brush, first of all I'll go for the Windsor Blue red shade and the Aureolin, and I'm going to try and keep my mix not too wet. Right, wish me luck. And I'm actually going to create some leaf shapes with my brush, not worrying too much about getting perfection, changing the green so that I have darks and lights, doing a little bit at a time, because what we have to do is pop that cling film on before it dries. So a bit at a time, letting light paper come through, crinkle it up like this, make it very crinkly, place it on the top, and you can use your back of your brush or your thumbnail, to just create some shapes and then leave. Now that's got to stay until it's dry, and then carry on and do some more. So I'll actually go over here and go dark in here. So dark against light, light against dark always. This is going to bring out the shapes of the flowers. And we don't have to put these leaves everywhere, but as you see they are completely surrounded by them actually, so you can do as much or as little of this as you like. You can get a bigger brush perhaps if you've got larger leaves to deal with. And then when it's dry, we can actually go back in and titivate and create branches, bring out leaf shapes better than they are at the moment, or just change things around. So I'm actually getting some nice shapes there. So don't go too far before we put the cling film on, because we do always want it to work. It's going to hopefully make some nice branchy shapes, and it's going to create some texture in the leaves. Try and end up with a nice shape. Important to vary your greens, but you can always go in and put some darks in afterwards, whereas it won't be easy to put lights in, although I suppose you could put a bit of yellow between some of the flowers. But this is a great brush for making twiggy and leafy type marks without getting too detailed with it all. You can draw a few if you want to with the tip of your brush, just to create some different shapes. Might just put a little bit of yellow in the centre here. But you must have everything ready, because having to stop and create little bits of cling film is going to work against you, because it'll be too late to catch it when it's at the right stage. Oh, right. I'm liking it, I think. Not actually done this before. So just go up this side a little bit, I think. That's a bit wet, so as I say, try not to let your brush get too wet. And don't worry if you go over part of your existing painting, that's just going to look good. Right, quickly. You can also, and I've done it before, put salt down underneath the cling film before putting cling film down. That gives even more texture and different sorts of marks. Right, well that's all I think I need to do for the minute. But I must let it dry before touching again. I just want to bring it up here between these petals here. But as you see, I've painted a few more detailed leaves at the top there to just give the impression, the right impression, and this is just going to indicate leaves. So I think that could work. We'll see. At least it's a bit of fun, something nice to do. So while that's just drying off, I don't think it should take too long before if I take the cling film off too soon, it's still going to move around and make the shapes that I perhaps didn't want in the first place. So let's just show you one or two other things. When you are using, when you actually finish the drawing stage, you can actually use masking fluid on your little stamens, either in the centre or if you have one of these little bits at the edge that have lost all its petals and you get left with that. Masking fluid will make a nice effect. So that's something you can do. You have to be careful not to end up with a wintry effect with the cling film. And this is the other thing I was going to suggest. If you don't want to do what I've just done and create leaves with your cling film, you can put the background all around or before if it's light and paint on the top using the cling film. But be careful about the colour you use, because it's going to look very wintry otherwise, and this is a lovely technique for putting behind berries and wintry things. But in the summer you've got to be careful about the colour you use, because you don't really want it to look too wintry. Another thing you can do this week, and I think it does work, I'm surprised that it works as well as it does. I don't usually like putting a pen around something as delicate as a wild rose, but I actually did draw that with the pen. So you can do your drawing with pen if you want to, some of it, and you know, mix it up a little bit using some mixed media. Go for a lovely big page of it if you're advanced and feel that you want to do a nice big picture. And this is the kind of shape that these Dogroses take on, but I haven't got around to putting background on that one. That could go on. But the other thing, talking about mixed media, and because all of our flowers are now sort of coming all at once, I want you to remember the Tombow pen, because what you can do when, like these Dogroses for instance, are not out and about for very long, so create a lovely big page of them with your pen, which doesn't take very long, and you can then refer to these, even trace them if you want to, and create a picture at another time, and do some leaves as well. For those who don't know how the Tombow pen works or what it is, I'll just quickly show you while my thing is drying. So it's a double-ended pen. It has a fat end which will fill in and make strong marks for you, or it has a fine end, double-ended. But if you actually use it on its side rather more than, let me see if I can get the right marks. If you use it on its side, you can get quite a fine end result with it. I think this one's a bit worn out now, and it has got a bit thick at the end. They don't seem to run out very often, but they do make, this one's running out more, and it's made some nice sort of fine broken marks for me by holding it on the side. But then what you do, because it's water soluble, is get your paintbrush, or if you want to do some drawing outside or on your holiday, get one of these. It's filled with water and it's the medium size, and that's all you really need to take, your little pen, and you can just paint in the shapes a little bit and show yourself where the shadows might be, or the darks and lights. And then if you want to, you can go back at any time and paint your particular subject that you've actually created a sketch for. I've got whole books full of it because I really like doing it. And it does capture the flowers nice and quickly for you to go back to at a later date. Such fun. I have got them. If you haven't got one and you want one, I could send them. Okay, so that's the way it works. You just keep wiping it. Just give it a squeeze and wipe it on a tissue or a cloth, and you can keep on using that pen like that. Okay, it comes in all sorts of different colours, pastel colours, primary colours, but I tend to use the black and white quite a lot, and that's a black one. So I managed to use that in a very fine way, which was good. But as I say, I've got books and books of it, and it's very helpful if somebody asks you to paint a poppy in the middle of the winter, and you've got a nice big page of them that you can go to. Right, let's see what's going on over here. So this probably isn't completely dry, but I'm going to peel it off anyway and be careful. But actually, that's not bad. Let me show you closely. So this is what you end up with at this stage. I think that's really pretty, and it has saved me such a lot of tedium having to paint every single leaf. But what you can do now is go back in and maybe just thread a few, not too wet a brush again, put a few stalks through where you feel you could just make a difference. But if you've got something that you really love the look of, leave it. You can put a few little veins in. I don't think I need to do an awful lot. I like it. But you can see it's already made some sort of stalk-like marks, and so I would suggest having a nice practice first before you go into your main picture, and see how you get on with this. But I don't really want to change it very much. I really like it. It's nice and loose. You could put a few darks in under there, but you could actually see, I don't know where my colours are now. I've turned this round. That's why the reds are always staring at you, because I always have the the same way around. A little bit of ultramarine blue, a little bit of umber or something, any brown, and just let's put a few little twig shapes or branches through to make it really look like the hedgerow, okay? But don't overdo it. As always, these techniques are nice and good and helpful, but if you overdo it, you kind of ruin the effect. But anyway, I think you see what I mean. I think I've shown you the technique, but this is a nice brush as well. If you want to create an even better shape or something, you can just carry on making tiddly marks at the edges with this little brush, because it's really good at tiddling around. So you can have a good fiddle this week with your brushes. Well, it's certainly stopped it looking tight or overworked, and so therefore I quite like it. But I would suggest, I did a little practice first, so I would suggest doing something like that to start with, and each one's going to look very different to the next. You'll never get the same thing happening twice, which is another nice thing to happen. And so have a go with the plastic film, but as I've said, if you don't want to do this, you can just use the plastic film behind your picture and make a nice background. So I'll leave it to you, or in fact do both. I'll put the notes in. I think, as I've said quite a lot, I want to say quite a lot about this, so I'll write it down and probably put the notes separately rather than in the email. And next week I'm going to think about putting a selection of flowers in a vessel and somehow using the sponging technique. Not quite sure yet how or what I'll do, but I'll show you the sponging technique anyway, one way or another. Okay, have a good week everyone, and I'll look forward very much to seeing your film pictures. Bye.